Hey guys, it's the Chad, your C10 truck nerd. Well, by now, most of you guys know I'm a huge fan of 67 to 72 Chevy C10 trucks. The Action Line series by far has got to be the best looking truck that GM ever produced, but to me, it's not just about the trucks. It's the people and the history behind them. And that's why I've decided to go through and start a new series on the channel called The Story Behind the Truck. And that's not where we're just going to highlight the trucks. It's going to be about the owners, the history of the truck, and even the cool stories that come along with it. So to kick this series off, I've got one special story to share with you guys, and I think you're really going to like it. Well, a couple years ago at C10 Nationals at the Texas Motor Speedway, I ran into two awesome brothers named Keith and Dan. Now, Keith recognized us right away from the YouTube channel, and we got to talking for quite a while, and he showed me his gorgeous 67 Chevy C10 that he and his brother Dan had spent the last 18 months on a frame-off restoration. Now, that truck was gorgeous, but it wasn't just the truck that stuck with me, it was their story. So I went through and asked Keith, hey, would you mind if I did a few-minute walk-around video with you? That way I could post it on the channel, and he thought that was going to be really cool. So that's kind of where our story began. So I'm going to show you guys that video from C10 Nationals first, and then we'll dive a little bit deeper into their story. So I'm here with Keith, and we're going to check out his 1967 C10. Now this thing is just absolutely gorgeous, and he's one of our subscribers to the channel, so I appreciate your support. And
good seeing you here.
Completely jealous of your truck.
Thanks.
So if you give us a quick walk around, show us what you got.
Cool. It's a 67, and I bought it about 2 years ago, and it was an eBay purchase. The truck was, I won the bid for $7,000, nice. And it didn't look anything like this.
Okay, good. I was really jealous then.
So it was a mostly complete truck and $10,000 worth of parts. A lot of guys buy these trucks and they put them in their garage and they start buying parts, and they either run out of money or they run out of skills to do what you got to do to get it to this level.
Oh, absolutely.
And, so that's kind of the story about where it came from. But me and my brother built this in his garage in Palm Beach. He's got the skills, I provide labor, and we did nuts and bolts. 18 months to finish.
Oh wow, that's from where it sits now. That's awesome. So what do you got under the hood here?
It's a LS2. Okay. And it's 4L60 transmission behind it that is built to handle the power. This it's got a cam in it and had some head work done on it, and it's putting out about 550 horsepower.
Nice. You've got quite the suspension. You got the kind of the autocross CPP suspension.
It's the total CPP package, and their big brake package and all of that.
Awesome. So what wheels are you running? US mags?
Yes, US mags.
Man,
I think that they go well with the truck. You know, they're not super expensive, but they do the job and look the part. Completes the look of the truck to me.
Absolutely. How'd you pick silver? How'd you come up with the color?
Almost every one of my cars is silver.
Okay.
And I really wanted a silver metallic, and I picked it out of a book, and you really don't know what it's going to look like until you get it on the truck. And it turned out nice. It turned out to be exactly what I wanted.
It does. With the lower trim on the 67, 68. I mean, yes, I think it just really sets it off. Well, I know you've got a sweet custom interior. Why don't you
sure.
Tell us a little bit about what you got in here?
So it is a full TMI package. The door cards, the dash, the seats, the center console are all TMI. But you order it up, it's not that expensive, and in one day your interior is done basically.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about what's going on at the upholstery shop after you get a nice paint down and all that.
Yeah, that's right. That is right.
That's awesome. So short bed truck.
It did not begin life as a short bed truck. It was a long bed truck. We cut the frame and C-notched the frame.
Okay. Well, you've got a ton of meat sitting under here. I see 315s.
Yes, that's right. They're 20-inch wheels on the back, 18-inch on the front.
Wow. Now I think one of the coolest things that sets your truck apart from most is the bed, the floor. What do you have here? I don't even know what I'm looking at.
It is oak bedwood from Marquez in Oklahoma City.
Okay.
I believe we got their trim also for that, and it is it has the hidden fasteners that are underneath so that
that.
you don't see the bolts in the trim.
How'd you come up with the color?
It matched the truck. It's a silver truck. I didn't really like the idea of having just stained wood in the back that was going to give us a brown look. So we took the wood, sanded it, we painted it black, and then put a white glaze on top of it, and then cleared it with the same clear that we put on the truck.
That is.
And I think it turned out nice and goes well with what we the look that we were trying to go for.
It's definitely ties to that silver. It's like a silver bullet again out here. Mm-hmm. I like the tailgate trim. I know it's not 67, 68 era, but man, that black
it's
just really.
It's perfect with that truck. Is what I think.
It just goes great. I like the one-piece back glass. Just, man, I don't think there's anything that I would change on it.
Thank you. Us either. I mean, after you build one of these, you say, but there's not anything that today that we would do differently than what we did.
Yeah. And doing it with family, the trucks are the trucks, but the stories behind the trucks, I think, are what it's all about on this end of it there. So, well, excellent. I think you guys did a great job.
Hey, Dan.
Here's Dan, the workmanship out of it as well, too. So, anything you want to say about it?
I'm glad it's out of my garage.
Well, you guys did quality work.
We didn't ship anything out. Dan did everything.
It was all done in the garage.
That's a lot. That's impressive.
Look underneath.
We can do that for sure. We'll dive under it too, but man, nice to meet you guys both.
It was great meeting you.
Oh, absolutely.
Hey, thanks for stopping by.
Yeah, killer truck, man. Thanks for the support, and I'm still jealous. It's fun. As soon as I got back from C10 Nationals, my plan was to go through and edit that walk-around video and get it posted to the channel, but I didn't. There was just so much more to that story than building a truck, and I really wanted to share it with you guys, so I put it on the back burner until I could talk to Keith and Dan, get their permission to, tell their story. Well, unfortunately, before I could get there, I had a bunch of corrupted video files when I transferred them over to my laptop, and I thought I had lost everything. Well, fast forward several months, and I found somebody that could go through and recover the majority of those. So the other day, I reached back out to Dan and said, hey, do you guys care? Can I get your permission to share your story on the channel? And he said, oh man, that would be awesome. Now, Keith doesn't know that we're doing this, so it's going to be a surprise to him. So I don't know how to tell you guys, but this is a really neat story. I'm going to be telling it from Dan's perspective, so here we go. Alrighty, so quick disclaimer, I am nowhere near as handsome as Dan is, so you're just going to have to imagine his face on me as I tell his story, so here we go. Well, on March 20th of 2018, Dan was heading to Utah on vacation with his wife and 2 kids. Well, he said when they landed in Salt Lake, Dan took his phone off of airplane mode, and he said it sounded like he had just won a major jackpot on a slot machine in Vegas. He had several emails, texts, and missed calls. Well, as he started sorting through the messages, assuming somebody had passed away in his 6-hour flight, he had realized something much more exciting was going on the ground. Well, when Dan was 21 years old, his mother, a Baptist preacher's daughter, had sat him down and told him that he had a brother. Well, that brother was a year and a half older than him, and she had given him up for adoption right after he was born. At the time, she was only 19 years old. Well, back in 1963, being a preacher's daughter, having a baby out of wedlock, was just not an image that the church was trying to put out in the universe. So there was a hospital down in New Orleans where preachers would send their so-called tarnished daughters to finish out their pregnancies. Once they began to show, then they would give birth and, place that child with a waiting family. The mother then was given a bus ticket back home, and they were never to speak of the incident again. Well, if we fast forward 21 years to when Dan's mother told him and his 3 sisters about their older brother. Well, back in 1986, they tried to locate their brother, but there was no DNA banks, so their only option was to reach out to the orphanage and try to track him down that way. Well, unfortunately, the only thing they were allowed to do was leave a letter in his file just in case he came back, looking for his previous family. Well, of course, years later, a hurricane wiped out the whole area in New Orleans where the orphanage was, and all the paper records were lost in the floods. Well, fast forward to 2018, and halfway across the country, long-lost brother Keith was told by his doctor that he needed to get a DNA test to identify any potential medical risks he might have from his birth family. Well, Keith was a little hesitant, but after a little persuasion from family and friends, he eventually caved in and he sent his sample in to 23andMe. Well, about 6 weeks later, he received his results and he found that he had several cousins and even a possible grandparent match. Now, one of his new cousins, Lisa, received an email from 23andMe as well, and it says, "You have a new cousin match," from their website. Well, being a close family, Lisa reached out to this new family connection, trying to figure out who he was and where he came from. Well, Keith emailed her back and said, "Hey, we're first cousins, so one of your parents' siblings must be my mom or dad." So he asked Lisa, "By chance, do you know if anyone might have given up a child back in 1963? And she said, "Yes. We've been looking for you for many years." She explained to Keith that he had 4 siblings and they all lived in Florida. Within hours, Keith was FaceTiming with his sisters and his mom while Dan was flying overhead, completely oblivious to the crazy events that were happening down below. Well, the next morning, Dan was debriefed by his sisters and found out that he wasn't the only boy in the family anymore, and he was no longer the oldest sibling. So Dan decided to write Keith an email to say he had been thinking of him for many years and wondered if they had ever crossed paths. He said it wasn't easy trying to find the words to reach out to a missing part of him. Well, after several edits from Dan's wonderful wife, he hit the send button and he waited. Well, soon after, Dan got a phone call from Keith, and that's where their journey began. Well, in 2018, Keith and his wife Kim flew to Florida to meet their long-lost family. The first time Dan saw Keith was in a video from his sisters that they had sent him at the airport of him and his mom holding hands walking to the car. Well, Keith and his wife ended up staying with Dan and his family in Palm Beach as they got to know each other. Well, Dan quickly realized that he and Keith had so many things and personality characteristics that they shared. They loved motorcycles and they went on almost 10 motorcycle trips over the years. Well, then in 2020, on one of those trips, Keith mentioned to Dan that he was looking for a nice old Chevy truck, and Dan said, "Well, shoot, we should just build one for you." And that's kind of where their hunt for the C10 began. Now, Keith searched high and low, and he finally found a C10 on eBay that he had decided had a decent cab, and it came with a bunch of new parts, so he pulled the trigger. They ended up shipping the truck back to Dan's house in West Palm Beach. Keith started his wish list and started ordering a bunch of parts. Now, the truck began its life as a short bed, but that wasn't going to fly for the brothers, so they decided to cut it down to a short bed themselves. Next, they media blasted the cab, began the metal repairs, and did all the body work. Well, over the next 18 months, Keith would fly to Florida once a month, spend 3 or 4 days at a time getting his hands dirty with Dan. Now, the brothers completed 99% of that build by themselves in Dan's garage. They did the metal work, the body work, the suspension, the engine swap. They even painted that thing in Dan's inflatable paint booth, I think in his driveway. Now, Dan said the biggest nightmare of the build was the electrical. Keith wanted all the bells and whistles, you know, the BMW cruise control, the push button to start ignition and power everything. Now, those two guys struggled through a massive restoration living halfway across the country from each other, but they eventually got it done. You know, they spent 18 months and put over 1,000 hours restoring Keith's truck. But during that 18 months, they were able to bond and catch up on the last 55 years that they had missed. Now, once the truck was completed, they shipped it back to College Station, Texas, where Keith lives, and he still drives it today. How stinking cool is that story? You know, from the outside, I saw an awesome truck at C10 Nationals, but that was just the byproduct of an amazing journey for two brothers. Again, like I say, the trucks are awesome, but the stories and the owners are what it's all about. So a huge shout out to Dan for letting me share your story or your guys' story. And Keith, you know, surprise. I'm terribly sorry that this took so long to get this video out, but I hope you enjoyed it. Alrighty guys, I gotta say, that was a ton of fun. You know, being able to go through and highlight Keith and Dan's story on the first episode of this new series, I mean, just two stand-up dudes, so I appreciate their help. Well, if you guys haven't, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and why don't you guys leave some comments down below for Keith and Dan. I'm sure they'd appreciate reading any kind words we get from our viewers as well. Now, if there's anybody else out there that'd like to be highlighted on this new series, you know, send me an email or a message on Instagram or Facebook or c10trucknerd.com. You know, kind of tell me, is it the history of the truck? Is there a really cool story? Is it the owners? You know, I'll read through all that stuff and maybe we can get you on. And another thing, I got quite a few hoodies and t-shirts left out there too. So if any of you guys are interested, shoot me a message. I'll let you know what design, color, sizes, and pricing that I've got left for you. Well, I appreciate your time and thanks for watching. Thanks for the story, Keith and Dan.